for being patient.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
That's right, Bobby. You can sing about it today.
Hello, I can hear. A little technical issues in the
Yes, folks, we'll be talking about the 1986 season, of course, the 1987 Super Bowl. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Big Bobby G, as we talk everything Giants. And this is going to be like a Super Bowl special, because we're going to talk a little bit about the Giants and the Eagles. You know, the similarities, the differences. Bobby, you know, I mean, the first instance we could talk about is, of course, they're from the NFC East. And back in the 80s, the NFC East was a pretty strong conference.
Yeah, no, I mean, they all took turns, from the Dallas Cowboys to the Washington Redskins. The Eagles missed out on some of the Super Bowl runs that the other three did make during the 80s, 90s, 70s for that matter. But the Eagles did make this Super Bowl against the Raiders and ended up coming up short back in 1980, I believe. It was a 79 season, the 80 Super Bowl, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So we've been from the 80s to the 90s. The NFC East has represented the NFC numerous times in the big game. And it's so funny because I can go back to the beginning. I think I said this to you a few weeks ago. The beginning of our show, we go back to September. I remember, and I said it, so I'm gonna own it. I said I doubt we would get two teams from the NFC East in the playoffs. Never mind the NFC Championship game and the eventual Super Bowl winner. So I did not see that coming. But we had another banner year as a conference. Our conference has always been one of the stronger conferences, predominantly through the history. The modern day history of the Super Bowl era. So the NFC East has always been well received as one of the tougher conferences to play when we're playing interconference games against other teams.
So we also go with the big similarities. They both won 14 games. Of course, 14-2 back then. It was only 16 games. 14-3 this year with the Eagles. And I guess if you want to start with the first opposite thing, I mean, they both have good running games. I mean, Joe Morris had a great year. Of course, Saquon Barkley has a record-setting year. But a quarterback, you got a running quarterback versus a pocket quarterback in Phil Simms.
Right. And, it was funny because I was looking at some old highlights of Phil today, back in the 86 season. He did tuck it and run it a few times when he had to. And he got some decent yardage. Of course, they were probably timing him with a calendar. But he got some decent yardage anyways when he did have to get outside the pocket and try to make some things happen with his legs. But certainly, he's no Jalen Hurts, that's for sure, when it comes to running. And Hurts had some outstanding runs yesterday. I know I chimed in on your show this morning that I thought that the Chiefs defense did an outstanding job game planning on Saquon, where maybe the Denver Broncos didn't do that as well against the Giants running game. But Phil Simms was so prolific as a thrower in that game. Still holds the record. I want to say he was 22 of 25.
Yes.
With 2 drop passes.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, that's part of the game. Receivers do drop passes. Yeah, but still, as you said, he's the MVP. Jalen Hurts is the MVP.
Right.
I guess you could say that, and again, I think Hurts, if I'm not mistaken, was like 17 to 22, very proficient.
Yes.
221 yards, 2 touchdowns, and of course the running difference with Phil. But I mean, back then there wasn't a lot of running quarterbacks, man.
No, it was a whole different game. I mean, now I know teams, GMs, coaches, they're when they're scouting all these quarterbacks coming to college now, they really want a dual threat quarterback who can put pressure on the defense, either throwing the ball or running the ball. Back in Phil's day, you stood back there, you read the field, and in a lot of ways, I think quarterbacking was harder. Because so many times now in the modern football age with the running quarterbacks, it's 1 or 2 reads and they're tucking and running. Right. Phil would go back there. He would look 2, 3, 4 times down the field and maybe come back to the other side of the field again before he'd throw the ball. Different type of quarterback, different type of strategy, obviously, but different time too.
Yeah, you sound like an old person right now, Bobby. I just thought I do.
I'm going back and forth here. Maybe I should shut up. I'm showing my age.
So, I mean, Saquon was held in check for the most part, which, I said all week. I like an idiot, I flipped my pick to the Chiefs at the end. Didn't stick with the Eagles. I was with the Eagles all week. Well, since they announced the Super Bowl.
So you flipped on Sunday to the Chiefs after you told me all week long the Eagles are going to win the game?
Yes.
The Eagles going to win the game.
Yes, I would have rooted for Saquon. I mean, a former Giant, but I mean, it just, I don't know. Something got to me. I don't know what happened. I think my wife, a producer, she was going with the Chiefs, so she talked me into it.
She talked you into it. Yeah. Well, just like you talked me into saying Eli Manning was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. We can talk about that later, though, maybe.
Oh, we will. We'll definitely talk about that. So,
but the game itself, I mean, you're right. I think Spags, and I love Spagnuolo. We've talked about him on this show many times, in what he means to us as Giant fans, and in what he did in helping us win a couple Super Bowls. So, I think, and I wasn't in Spags' office or in the meeting rooms, but it seemed to me that they picked their poison. They seemed to me that they said, we're not going to let Barkley beat us. We'll take our chances with Hurts if he makes some plays, but we're not going to let Barkley beat us.
Yeah.
And, it's so funny. Even though Saquon didn't have a really, really big game, I was actually talking to my stepson a couple hours ago. And he said something to me that I hadn't really thought about. Saquon never really got negative yardage. Every time he touched the ball, it might not have been for 15 or 20 yards, but it was 3 yards, 4 yards. He had a couple 9 and 10 yards in there too, but he was never a negative play when he touched the ball. So that had to say something for, the Eagles offensive line, I think, because of what the defense was doing to them. But Hurts had the game of his life. I mean, he threw some dimes yesterday. I mean, it was one play, 4th down. I think it was the third quarter, going into I think it was the third quarter. It was 4th and 1 or something, and he throws a bomb, and it's a touchdown. Yeah, and the way that they attacked the Chiefs' defense offensively, I thought was outstanding. But I kind of reviewed. I watched some of the big plays today, and I watched them again, and I jotted down a couple plays that I think, now what I saw was really a kind of a prelude that was going to happen, and it goes really back to the first quarter, and it's the first time that the Chiefs have the ball. It's 3rd and 9, and the Eagles, who rush 4 all day long, they never blitz. They rush 4 all day long. So they were able to put pressure on Holmes. I don't know if you remember the play. He kind of ran around. He did a twist turn, came back to his right side, and threw the ball downfield and almost threw an interception.
Right.
So that was kind of a prelude of things that were going to happen in that game that we didn't know at the time. The second play was, and this is when, every time I look at the highlights today, they always showed the bench after this play here. So it's the second quarter. D. Hopkins is the receiver. He's wide open. And I don't know, I know they're saying he dropped the ball, but he was kind of stumbling before the ball got to him. But and I'm sitting there watching the game thinking, what's going to be the play? What's going to be the play that the Chiefs are going to say, this is the play we're going to mount on, and we're going to just build on this one great play that we're doing, and this is going to be the play that hopefully turns this game around for us and puts us in a position to maybe make a run here. And I think that play was the play, because if he catches that ball, that's a touchdown.